Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Marguerite Anglin, and I'm the Public Art Director for the City of Philadelphia. On behalf of OACCE, the city's Office of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy, I'd like to welcome you to this public design presentation meeting for Philadelphia's Harriet Tubman statue. This meeting marks an exciting milestone in the Harriet Tubman statue commission process, where you will see the designs being proposed by our 5 artists and hear them present their visions for the statue. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. We know that everyone is eager to see the designs, and we were really excited for the artists to share them with you. The City of Philadelphia is very proud to be commissioning this permanent statue that will be located on the northeast apron of City Hall to honor the legacy of Harriet Tubman. Philadelphia plays a very important role in Harriet Tubman's story, being the place where she found freedom after escaping from slavery and also being a frequent stop on the Underground Railroad. And so Philadelphia's Harriet Tubman statue will also be the first statue of a historic Black female figure in the city of Philadelphia's public art collection. This evening, you're getting ready to hear from each of the artists who are competing to create the Harriet Tubman statue. During the presentation, each artist is going to share their drawings, renderings, and models and describe their vision for the statue. And as you're about to see, each of the artists have created very unique designs that each tell a different story about Harriet Tubman's courage, her determination, her significance to Philadelphia, and contributions to our nation's history. The next slide, please. Okay, so our goals for tonight include providing a quick recap of what's happened so far in the Harriet Tubman statue process to date. Then you will see and hear the design presentations from each artist. You also have an opportunity to ask the artists questions about their designs and discuss their proposals directly with them in order to get clarification, so you can be as informed as possible to complete an online public survey about the designs. And you're also going to learn more about how you can give input through the survey, which I'm going to talk about more on the next slide. So directly after this meeting, the online public survey for the Harriet Tubman statue designs will open, and it's going to be available on OACCE's website from 8 p.m. tonight until September the 1st at 11:59 p.m. The public survey will include the artist renderings and the models that you'll see tonight. And in addition, you'll also be able to read a brief written narrative and hear an audio description from each of the artists explaining their design concepts and visions for the statue in their own words. The survey will ask you to rank each of the artist's designs in 7 unique areas on a scale from 1 to 5. So during the presentations, as you're listening, you're seeing the designs, please keep in mind the following, because these are the areas that you'll be ranking in the survey. Artistic excellence. You'll ask yourself, how excellent is the design visually and artistically? Originality, how unique is the statue design? Likeness, does it look like Harriet Tubman? Is the statue easily recognizable as Harriet Tubman? Essence, does it capture Harriet Tubman's essence, her humanity and her character? Emotional qualities, does it evoke feelings of pride, inspiration, empowerment? Site appropriateness, is it site specific to this location and to Philadelphia? So for example, if you were to pick up the statue and put it in another city or location, would that make a difference? And then finally, educational qualities. Does it educate people and inspire them to learn more about Harriet Tubman? Again, this public survey is the official method that we are using to get your feedback. So I see we have 88 people on the Zoom tonight so far. So by this time tomorrow, we hope to have at least 88 people who have filled out the survey. Next slide, please. Okay, so how will the public input survey results be used? So the rankings and comments that are received from the survey will be tallied and shared with the semi-finalists, who will have an opportunity to incorporate any feedback into their design prior to the advisory committee's final review and selection of the winning artist. And also the rankings and comments will be tallied and shared with the advisory committee, because your input will be one of several evaluation criteria that the advisory committee will consider when they're selecting the winning artist and statue design. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, speaking of the advisory committee, this committee brings very diverse perspectives The committee is comprised of members of Harriet Tubman's family, historians, cultural leaders, educators, visual artists, and high school students. But again, the committee's most important role is to make the selection of the artists and the winning design. Next slide, please. So just some housekeeping things before we get started here. This public meeting is being recorded, and a link will also be made available online for those who are not able to attend tonight. We're going to hold questions until all 5 artists have presented. So during the Q&A session, please just use the raise your hand feature, and when you're called on, you'll be able to unmute yourself to speak. Also, during the meeting, the chat is disabled, and that's because we want to encourage you to put your written comments in the online public survey that will open right after this meeting at 8 p.m. tonight. We know that we may not get to everyone's comments tonight, but again, everyone will have an opportunity to provide your comments in the public survey, which is how we're going to be tracking your feedback. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's our agenda. We've gone through the welcome and goals of the meeting. We'll also give a overview of what's happened so far in this commission to date. We will then start our artists' design presentations. We'll have time for discussion and Q&A, and then we'll follow up with some next steps. Next slide, please. So here's what's happened so far in this public art competition. In October of 2022, OACCE conducted a public survey to inform what are the goals for the Harriet Tubman statue that will be included in the call for artists. And 515 people participated in the survey. Then from November the 30th to January 26th, the Harriet Tubman statue call for artists was distributed locally and nationally for artists to submit their qualifications, their past artwork, and response to short answer questions. Then on March 31st, the city announced that 5 artists, 5 semi-finalists out of 50 total applicants were selected by the advisory committee to move on to create statue design proposals. On April the 24th, we hosted the first public input meeting for the semi-finalists to hear from Philadelphians about your aspirations for the Harriet Tubman statue, what stories that you thought the statue should tell about Harriet, and how the statue can be relevant to Philadelphia today. And that brings us to tonight, to our public design presentation meeting today. So after this meeting, the input survey will open at 8 p.m. for you to rank and provide feedback on each of the designs until September the 1st. The full schedule is online, but we're also going to talk about some next future steps later in the process at the end of this meeting. Next slide, please. So this is our site for the Harriet Tubman statue. The winning statue will be located and installed at an outdoor paved area that's on the northeast apron of City Hall. And this is right near the main public entrance of City Hall. And people who are walking on the apron of City Hall will be able to see the statue from all angles and walk around the statue. And it would also be visible from cars as people are driving around the corner. And that blue area there is indicating the extent of the space that'll be around the statue that the statue is dedicated for. Next slide. Okay, so now without further ado, next slide, please. These are the 5 artists that you will be hearing from tonight. Vinnie Bagwell, Richard Blake, Tanda Francis, Alvin Pettit, and Basil Watson. Each artist will be going one at a time and will have 10 minutes to present their designs. And as a reminder, we're going to hold questions until all 5 artists have presented. We will give each artist a warning when they've got 1 minute left, just to let them know to wrap it up and they're close to their time. We're going to be strict with the time tonight, just to make sure that all the artists have the same amount of time to present, and also we make sure we have enough time for Q&A at the end. Also, we ask the artists not to spend a lot of time introducing themselves or talking about their past artwork, because we want them to spend as much time as possible talking about their designs for this project. And if you're curious, you can also visit OACCE's website, where we have links to each artist's website. With that said, our first artist to present is Vinnie Bagwell.
Vinnie, unmute yourself.
Hi. How are you? I'm ready.
Yes.
Good evening. I am Vinnie Bagwell. I'm delighted to be here. It's an honor. I'd like to present to you my vision, Harriet Tubman, City of Liberty. My style is defined by candid portraiture and it's hand cast in bronze. I use bas-relief techniques to enhance my three-dimensional sculptures. So I'm using imagery, text, braille, and symbols to enlighten the viewer, to add visual intrigue and to provoke critical thinking. This sculpture is scaled at 9 feet tall. It is complementary to the surrounding sculptures. The massive skirt draws the eye, and bas-relief sculpture stories help to command the viewer to walk around the sculpture. This is a site-specific design, and it is a site-specific moment. This is 29-year-old Harriet Tubman. She is young, and after realizing for the first time that she's free, she gives thanks for her delivery to the City of Liberty. So this is the moment when Harriet Tubman regains her humanity, her majesty, her voice. She is reborn as one of the most famous conductors on the Underground Railroad. So you have a skirt that is blowing on the winds of change, if you will, and it is flush with stories in narrative bas-relief. So for instance, it's got waistband. There is a map of the escape route from Maryland to Philadelphia. She is running through a field of black-eyed Susans, which represents justice. There is a butterfly, which represents transformation from being enslaved to being free. Faces of Quakers, abolitionists, Underground Railroad conductors, and white community members, which are normally absent from sculpture representations, are included on her skirt. So you've got abolitionists William Still, Thomas Garrett, that is State Stevens, Lucretia Mott, and Frederick Douglass. They stand out in bas-relief, and in the background there is the Independence Hall clock tower, which again references Philadelphia. On the back, is a relief sculpture that kind of spans the whole width of the sculpture. And again, this is to introduce her as a conductor who is enabling other people to seek freedom. It spans the width of the back. There are Adinkra symbols. You've got the Dwenemen, which means strength and humility. The Sampopa reminds us to never forget. Braille also is in the front. At the bottom, racism is learned behavior. So the Braille reads unlearn hate. It's on the hem of the skirt just under the abolitionist. Next slide, please. All right, so she is designed to go on that northeast corner. She's positioned because of the way that the corner goes, the way that the traffic kind of traffic, people driving experience her, but also for pedestrians. So she's facing north, but also east. And of course, east is for light of wisdom. She's on a low pedestal. It's about 6 inches high. It's a circle of black granite. It's a textured finish. There is text polished on it. There's a compass rose, which is polished on it. You might want to go to the next one so they can see that. Yeah, there you go. Can't really see that very well. But anyway, this shows you position. The compass rose basically is to show true north in position to where she's facing. There is an octagon apron that the pedal sits on. Octagon is a symbol of rebirth and protection. There is polished text in the front, which basically is the title, the artist name, and the commissioner. And on the back, there is a quote that says, "There ain't no turning back." This application will invite intimacy with the viewer. Also, we were asked to talk about community service and what we might do in terms of engaging the community. So My submission is to work with the high schools. Art colleges do not normally have a curriculum for public art, or nor do they teach art as a business. So I plan to engage the visual arts students from the high schools. There's the High School for Creative and Performing Arts, the Palumbo High School, the Julia L. Masterman Laboratory and Demonstration School. I also want to partner with Rush Arts Philadelphia for an exhibition and programming. And I'd like to add the Johnson House to support the creation of a historical symposium, to add scholarship to my programs. Harriet Tubman, City of Liberty, represents a young Black woman with unimpeachable integrity and exemplary bravery. She is an example of service. And so I hope to win. This work is destined to become a cultural destination. It will be worthy of creative educators and interdisciplinary teaching approaches, which will inspire students of all ages and foster cross-cultural dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinnie. Okay. So our second artist, make sure we get them up on the screen there. Okay, our second artist to present is Richard Blake. And Richard, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, good afternoon. I have to say how privileged I am to be one of the finalists being considered for the Harriet Tubman Monument. My design for Harriet Tubman will be very specific to Philadelphia, and I'll explain why as I go on. But the vision is of Harriet Tubman stepping from under the Liberty Bell, which is the iconic symbol for Philadelphia and freedom, then and now. She holds in her right hand, held high, a lantern. And I have to say that this lantern is not one which led her way through the swamps north, but this is a light that sheds light on future generations of young Blacks, and hopefully gives them more of an equal footing as they move forward in the world. Tucked into her belt is her trusty pistol that she was known to carry, and in the very back view of Harriet Tubman is the keystone, which is a symbol of Pennsylvania, around her neck, which is not easily discernible right now, but is a scarf that was given to her by the Queen of England, recognizing her heroic deeds. Harriet will stand, she will be about an 8.5-foot figure. The total monument will be 10 feet or perhaps slightly over that. And she will be mounted on a black granite base and cast in a silicone bronze, a dark golden brownish color. The treatment of the monument will be loaded with texture. It'll be very tactile. And if we could show the images of her face, her visage. This is the other side, okay. And my ability to render a likeness to Harriet Tubman should be displayed here in these clay sketches. And she will be a slightly older Harriet Tubman who has faced numerous treks back and forth to help free Blacks and bring them to the North. Here you can see the kerchief that was her gift from the Queen of England. And Harriet Tubman will be an iconic symbol of Philadelphia and the gateway to freedom in the North. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. So now we have Tanda Francis, and we're going to make sure that she's up on the screen there and that you're unmuted. Tanda, we don't see your, okay, but
Little sticky button.
there you go.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Tanda Francis. I just quickly, I'll tell you about myself. Clearly, I'm a sculptor, but I've also went to school in Philly. Fun fact, I'm on a mural there by a statue. One of my professors, ended up being in the mural. That's on 12th and Chestnut. But directly associated with my Adorn Me piece is actually at the Exchange Place, which is like a alter ego of me. And it's actually at the kind of like a major hub of like the last stop of like the Underground Railroad. Just a little like quick fun fact. And to my piece, the piece is called Together in Freedom. And I wrote a little something to myself to actually really just like remind myself of what like the main like idea, like the thoughts that I need to fully inspire me for the piece. And it's basically Harriet Tubman and her path to freedom, her path of that always included us. Like no matter what her idea was for us to come together. And for me, I feel like these public pieces are like something of a, like for me, it's like a mission of mine. This is like, especially Harriet Tubman, it's like, you know, for us to actually speak through our presence in the public space. So I use the constellation, the fact that Harriet Tubman used the constellations to actually kind of like to navigate herself and her loved ones and all the people that, you know, she wasn't even directly connected to. The idea was that she couldn't be free without all of us being free. Like, so to just keep on going back and having this idea of this kind of sculpture in the round that has a kind of like a story in itself. And if you look at the piece, can you advance that a little bit? A little bit more. The design is inspired by an open book. The idea is that she has so many like moments in her life, and I actually pulled out like 7 different moments, like different chapters in her life. I'll quickly go through it while I'm talking about it. Kind of the way that Harriet Tubman herself was seen and portrayed, and who she actually was a visionary first. First, she had a vision of what she wanted, and she went out and got it. She was a visionary, and then that led her to have like, you know, to be wanted by, you know, the authorities. Basically, this piece being an open book actually has writing it's inscribed into the surface, including the constellation. And so I wanted to actually talk about like kind of the idea of like the fact that this being at Philadelphia, and it's the home of the government. And there's so much that was important as far as like writing down what was said about who we are and what we will be. And the fact of the matter is this kind of like country that promised a certain thing didn't really like had owned people. So I kind of want this piece to be a symbol of actually like that ink, that kind of like mark that was made. So on the piece itself, it's kind of very tactile, and it has like this kind of eventually I want people in the community to actually impact onto these panels that you see. There are like panels all around in the different chapters of Tubman's life. So she was a visionary. The writings, you know, she had wanted posters, William Still records, and she was an abolitionist and war scout in a general, and where she eventually became like known as, you know, Moses. And eventually she grew to become a community leader. So I want this to be sort of a symbol of that. Like, she's just not, we tend to see some of the history, our history is something that has to be done in certain Black History Month or whatever. So I want this to be like really to delve into, to be a symbol of delving into what we see of Tubman, and actually have people in the community impact onto the surface itself. Production wise, I'm actually, my studio is both in Philadelphia and in New York. And I want to engage that. I want to engage the community there, and even here, anything. I'm actually open to that, kind of like this piece being a possibility of having a surface where there can be a community in literal impact. My studio is in this metal shop where I hear people like creating these surfaces. The surface I'm like where you, oh, I don't know if you can see that, but like I have these like tools themselves. It's just very like, you know, I want this to be a interactive experience where people actually impact a certain panel, so that actually becomes like a time capsule into the piece. So I'll just give you some information on the piece. It is a 12-foot piece, about 12 by 10 feet. And the inspiration behind this golden surface is this quote by Harriet Tubman, where she sees herself and in freedom. She reaches Philadelphia and she sees herself in freedom. She looks down at her hands and she says it was like she was surrounded by a golden light. And, you know, and that's what I want to actually put the viewers in, that vision of freedom. I want people to be reflecting and seeing themselves in the very front image. You can see that she's, there's kind of where you can see people, you can see reflection in the surface. The rest would be kind of like more, a softer gold, but there's a moment where you can actually, if you stand right in front of Tubman, you can see yourself in that vision. Like, this is the idea. You are being seen in her vision of freedom, while surrounded by this kind of on the surface you'll see like the constellations. And I want to also, I want this to be very much, again, interactive, like these small pieces. You don't see it here, but I have also these, the inspiration behind this kind of oval shape for me. I've been using this shape as, started off as rice grains, because I've heard stories about like people who are enslaved coming off the ship from Africa. Before they got, knowing that they were going to be enslaved, they hid rice grains in their hair to be able to come to the new world, or wherever they're going to end up, and still be able to like support themselves. So that was like a vision of hope. That's like a huge thing for me. Like, as far as like this piece and any piece that I really work on, it has to be proactive and actually giving hope. And for me, Juneteenth is like pretty much my favorite holiday for that reason, because we have this kind of like realness behind it. This is our real freedom. Everybody was free at this time. This is like, technically everybody was actually free. And that moment, can you imagine if you're an enslaved person and you realize that you are free, how unbelievable, that unbelievable hope. This is the motivation behind what I want to also remind people to connect to when they are in presence of on any day of this piece. But hopefully this is a place where people can really gather during Juneteenth. This is what I see. I mean, just as like a place where, you know, concerts, whatever, but we also have this time capsule basically with these physical like reminders, these little rice grains, that is actually for me like this kind of portal into what your vision of your freedom is, you know. So it's kind of like, for me, this piece is connecting to not only Harriet Tubman, it's connecting to us, and it's connecting to not us in the past, but or future. It's connecting to us now, because this piece, like being called Together in Freedom, is no joke. We're actually not just, you know.
Excuse me, Tanda, you have 1 minute. You have 1 minute left. Yep.
The entire country, like we're actually we're talking about like Civil War and things like that. This piece for me has so much potential to be kind of a glue to hold us together, a reminder of the importance of us being together. so these are little pendants as well, like for the workshops. I want to have everything from workshops to actually physically impacting a certain area of the piece to be actually worked in as a time capsule. This is forever. The piece is strong, bold, and it's ownable. You will remember it, and it also is classic. This isn't, what we're getting is like a bold silhouette of Harriet Tubman, and then a classic portrait of her at a large scale. Like she's really, this is something that I feel like it's time for us to see something like that kind of boldness and monumental scale, but still have a kind of like approachable feel.
Thank you, Tanda.
The piece is what I see for Together in Freedom.
Thank you so much, Tanda. We're at our 10 minutes.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're gonna continue rolling forward here. And our next artist that we're going to spotlight is Alvin Pettit.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank everyone for being here. And okay, great, I'll start with these. So basically, I wanted to take a different approach. I did a lot of research once. I was called in as a semi-finalist on this, and I went to the site several times, and I asked myself, what can I do differently? What can I do that hasn't been done yet? I researched a lot of different Harriet Tubman monuments across the country. I went online, that is, and looked at them, and I said, what's not out there? So I really wanted to capture something that I felt was unique, and at the same time, unique for Philadelphia. And I think that, well, in my opinion, I think I did that. Of course, that'll be up to everyone else, but let me start explaining what's going on here. So basically, I took the approach of showing Harriet Tubman as a military soldier. I wanted to capture her as, there's always a story about, like, if you saw the movie, it kind of ends, right, as she's leading the troops of military Civil War battalion into a battle. And that's where the movie ends, one that came out a couple years ago. And so that's where I kind of wanted to start my vision. That was what inspired me. And I found this old drawing that I believe is owned by the Schomburg right now that shows her. It's the only one I could find kind of the closest thing in her military gear. And so therefore, I'm showing her as a soldier. I'm showing her as a conqueror, as a force to be reckoned with. I guess to me, it was in contrast to what I saw out there when we see a lot of her story told as far as her taking the slaves to freedom, where she's running through the woods, where she's got children with her, got families with her. Where that story's been told. I wanted to show her, in a sense, as the aggressor. I didn't want to show her running. I wanted to show her the time when she actually went into battle and she became the aggressor against tyranny, against oppression, against slavery and slaveholders. So what inspired me was this battle she had fought in called, it was the 1863, if I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly, the raid of Combahee in South Carolina, where she led 150 Black soldiers, Union Civil War soldiers, against the Confederacy. And she actually won. They conquered and destroyed plantations and freed, I believe, 700 slaves in that one day. And this kind of captures her metaphorically, kind of maybe after that battle, during a moment of quiet in that battle. And from a closer look, I don't know how much you can see it here in these slides, but she's actually standing on a mound of chains and shackles. And that's what actually makes the base of where she's standing. And it's not really clear in this one because you'd have to see it in further detail, and I could only show a limited amount of pictures in this particular presentation. But in the corner in the back of what you can only see it from the rear view is actually a ruins of a Confederate flag on the ground. Her left foot is standing on, and it's buried beneath the shackles, kind of torn up, and you can see the flag there under her feet. And I thought that was very symbolic, not only of what's going on today as far as the controversy with the Confederate flag, but just the symbol of her stomping out oppression and overcoming it. It's not the most prominent piece down there, but there are things to see in the shackles. You see chains in there, and it just becomes like this, almost like a this post-apocalyptic view of what she's standing on. And for the slaves, it was post-apocalyptic because that was an apocalypse that they had gone through for centuries, and she helped to liberate them. I'd also like to go into kind of the concept behind the clothing. Like I said, I borrowed from this particular picture here, but also what's significant here as far as concept is blowing in the wind. So I kind of went for, it's like the strong force blowing against her metaphorically. So it becomes almost like the scientific theory, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And metaphorically here, the unstoppable force kind of being racism, oppression, tyranny that were against African Americans, women at the time, and she is the immovable object, a solid standing position, refusing to yield, won't fall, bearing against the winds that are tearing at her. I have a lot of the iconic images in there, like her gun, but also I thought it was important to show her with a rifle too, because that's what was in the Civil War's picture, and that's what she would use. I didn't go as far as just showing so much of a military outfit, but I wanted the military outfit in there as along with she was also a scout for the military as well too. So I wanted to kind of capture that essence of her also being a scout, a military war hero, and a battalion leader, kind of all in one. If at a closer look, it looks like her hands, they are in a praying position that captures her sense of spirituality, because she was very spiritual. So I wanted her kind of praying there, but it's also, if you, in a closer glance, she's actually clenching her fists. So she could be preparing to go into battle. She could be preparing to go into her next conquest. And with her head bowed, kind of calling on her higher power. She was very much a woman of faith, and I really wanted to capture that. Also, what was very important is the position. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this kind of shows a concept of what I was thinking when I went to the site. I was like, how can I really fit this into the site? And there's three different. There's other generals there on horses that you can see in this rendering I have here. General John Fulton and General George McCallan, and they stand almost like guardians of the City Hall structure. And I felt it was so appropriate to also have her there as a third soldier, kind of guarding this very palace-looking building, because I didn't really realize, I've been to Philly millions of times, but I never really paid attention to just how elaborate City Hall of Philadelphia was, one of the most elaborate municipal structures in the country. It almost takes on a palace effect. So I really like this whole sort of, these guardians of this palace, they're sort of lined up there like troops, and for her to be the only African-American woman amongst, the white male generals and white male war heroes, her being a female Black African-American war hero, I think is powerful, very powerful in that lineup, and goes perfectly with that landscape of Philadelphia, because the whole theme in that area, either Civil War heroes, founding fathers. So I wanted a founding mother there, and also Revolutionary War heroes. Also very important to me was the facial expression. So I really went into that. Let's see, what else did I want to cover here? Yeah, so also the pose that I chose is very much also that symbolic of somewhat of a guardian angel, or like a protector. I was also inspired by the archangel statues that you see in the Vatican and stuff like that. And it's important because the way our traffic flows in that area, a lot of the viewers that will actually be looking at this piece will be the traffic that goes in that circle. So I think I knew it had to be something bold. It had to be something deliberate and something that commanded that space very well, but you had to almost see it as a glance. And I think even the pose that I chose with her kind of praying there kind of shows her in a very calming position as people drive by. You get the point real quick. It's bold, it's calming, and I think it's a very powerful piece just to sit in there and really command that space. Let's see what else. And I think from an educational perspective, it's going to be literal, but not too literal. So it really also makes you ask questions. For those who may not know who she is, which I think there's very few of that, I think it's a piece that really would make you want to entice you to ask, well, who is she? And what is this woman amongst all these other statues of men? The quote that I chose that will be on there will be a quote that she made, and I think it goes perfectly with this. It says, "And I prayed to God to make me strong and able to fight." And I want that pose on the back of the platform, where you see there, maybe her name on the front. Now the platform can change a little bit. This is still in the concept stage, but this is just something that, so you get the point. But I think that quote is perfect for this. And from the back, I didn't, I was thinking about, should there be other objects in there, other whatever being, but I thought her being there as a lone warrior, kind of like this Joan of Arc figure, I think kind of works as a much more powerful statement.
Alvin,
And,
you have 1 minute.
okay. And from the back, the concept is the viewer becomes the follower of this woman. So I think when you see it from the back position, whoever's standing back there, she kind of becomes their protector. She kind of becomes their leader. And I kind of designed it that way. So the back is just as interesting to look at as the front. And like I said, there's all kind of things to see within the rubbish and whatnot there too. So basically, I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to accomplish with this piece. And I hope to obviously get the assignment, and I think it'll really work well right there oh yes. And what else do I have there? Let me just skip to the rest of that's just showing it from the front. Do I have another slide there?
I think that's the last.
That was the only thing. Okay, yes, and this is from the front. And as you can see, the size, I'm thinking about 11 to 12 feet on this at least, because it's really got to be enough space. Okay.
You're at your 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, before we moved on, we turned off the reactions that you were seeing on your screen, just because we don't want to distract the artist presenting. We want you to show us how much you heart or thumbs up the designs in the online survey. All right, thanks everyone. Basil, you can go ahead.
Keep going. If you are tired, keep going. If you're scared, keep going. If you're hungry, keep going. Don't ever stop, keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. This is the quote attributed to Harriet Tubman that inspired my design. I want to, I would say Harriet is a multifaceted personality known as an American abolitionist and social activist. She is first known for her personal fight to freedom from slavery in the South, and then leading scores of persons through the Underground Railroad to their freedom. During the Civil War, she also acted as an American, she acted as a scout and spy for the Union, and later remained an activist in the movement of women's suffrage. She also said, "I have a right to liberty or death. If I could have one, I would have, if I can't have one, I will have the other." So her life for me is an epic. It revolves around her flight for freedom. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't passive, it wasn't a stroll through pastoral pathways or a leisurely journey, but it was a fierce battle through arduous terrain. And this is the moment that I wanted to capture. I wanted to disturb my neighbor. I wanted people to understand and feel the horror of her journey. So here she is leading. I imagine her as such a large figure that one figure of her couldn't fully tell the story of the drama and the fight and the struggle that she experienced. So here I have her leading people through the mire, through the struggles, through the bush, not in freedom. Her journey is not over, but she is in the middle of the struggle. You can hear the dogs barking, you can feel the trees and the swamps, and all that is the moment that I want to depict Harriet Tubman. So I decided a composition of a number of figures. I boiled it down or edited it down to 4 figures. And she is, to the next slide, please. She is on a slant, moving up, moving forward. And as she moves forward, she drags people with her. people are holding on to her. She is giving the signal to keep going. And this is what I want to depict of Harriet Tubman. The artistic quality of the piece will have Harriet Tubman. Can we go back in slide? We'll have Harriet Tubman finely modeled, very recognizable as the front figure. Then the other figures will be very gesturally modeled, very loosely modeled, where it's not necessarily a personality, but it's more symbolic of the people that she carried with her, that she dragged through these swamps, through the railroad to freedom. As she's doing this, there will be details within the piece. So all the details more to the front will be more finely modeled. And as it moves back, it becomes more and more gestural and free flowing in terms of the modeling. There will be focus on details that, like the hands, the feet, the shoes, parts of her attire and the attire of the other protagonists in the composition that will highlight details. But in general, it will become more muted, more free-flowing as it moves back. But the figure in front will be very recognizable as Harriet Tubman. The ground on which she is standing will be rough, symbolic of the rough terrain that she had to traverse. The wedge at the bottom will indicate the hill that she had to climb to a higher ground. And what we will have is that wedge. Can we go to the other slide? That wedge will be granite. And from the part that the feet are on will be bronze, moving up onto bronze for the entire sculpture. But you'll have granite as the wedge on which will be engraved the quote, "Keep going." And that wedge will then be placed on a square granite slab, which would be approximately a foot high. So the entire sculpture should be approximately 13 feet in height, because you have a foot at the bottom slab, the wedge moving up to a height of 4 feet, which will have the engraving of the coat around it, and then the bronze itself, which will be approximately, the figures will be approximately 1 1/3 life size, which is in the 8-foot region. That is basically my design, but the idea is to present the drama, the horror, the struggle through which she went during the Underground Railroad. So it will stop people. It's not a pleasant sculpture to look at. It's one that will stir emotion, one that through the movement, through the tension in the hands and in the feet and in the dress, some in torn garment and so on, will arrest the viewer, force the viewer to ask questions about what is this struggle all about, and encourage them to learn more, and not just to learn more, but to feel the anxiety, the pain, the struggle, the angst that Harriet Tubman and the others who were on the railroad experienced during their journey. So that is basically my design. And I want people to leave with the feeling that if Harriet Tubman can go through this and keep going, then I, the viewer, can keep going, because my struggle pales in comparison to what she went through, and the angst and all the horror and struggle that she experienced. So I wanted to act as an inspiration for those viewing it to say, hey, the journey is still on. the Underground Railroad still exists. We still have the fight to move forward, and we need to keep going if we want freedom. And it's either freedom or death. And this is the horror of what she experienced, and this is the horror of what we have to fight, continue to fight through. So this is my design, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Basil. Okay, and thank you to all of our artists for presenting such different, such unique and meaningful statue interpretations of Harriet Tubman. So at this time, we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. Just a couple reminders here. I'm going to be asking our OACCE staff to help us. And if you would like to ask a question, please click the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and Noni will call on you to unmute yourself to share your thoughts or questions. Before you ask your question, however, please let us know who your question is for, if it's for a specific artist or for all of the artists. Also, we ask only one question per person, just so we can hear from as many people as possible. And if you have another question after you've asked your first question, please hold it so we've heard from everyone. We'll call on you again once everyone has asked their question. And don't forget, right after this meeting, our online public survey opens at 8 p.m. for you to provide your written comments and your feedback. So whether you make a comment verbally tonight or not, we still need you to fill out the survey to make sure that your voice is officially counted. And just before we get into the questions, Noni, can you please go back to slide 4? I just want everyone to keep in mind the areas that you're going to be ranking in the survey, because I want you to feel free to ask the artist questions specifically to get clarity around any of these areas that you're going to be ranking, so that it will help you, that clarification will help you when you're filling out the survey. Just going to put up on the screen for just a second there. Okay. Let's move forward to this point in the discussion. We have a summary slide here for all the artist designs, and if you can start by just raising your hand and we'll call on you. Okay, and I think we have all of our artists here now on the screen. So Noni, do we have any raised hands?
Yes, I see a few. First, I see a question from Faye Anderson. Faye, I am allowing you to talk, so please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my question is for Tanda. Tanda, could you please tell us more about the panels? I'm curious about what text would be included. I think you mentioned William Still's journal. Would you have the entries related to Harriet Tubman, among other entries?
Hi, yes. Yeah, I just saw a lot of, like, I think it's kind of that record of the people who she actually did lead to freedom. Just something noted. Just something noted would be like a name, like names and paths. Just something noted on the surface. Like oops, sorry.
Oh,
So yeah.
But what, I think, how many panels will there be?
There'll be 7 altogether.
7. So what text in the 7 panels?
I have names and I have like just stories. There's even a wanted poster. For me,
okay.
I like the idea of having varied text that kind of give a full picture of Harriet Tubman. This is the kind of thing that I'd like to develop in community workshops.
Oh, great.
As to what would be something that would most, would come forward as the most important things. But I do have things that, like, as far as who she was as an abolitionist, and images that show her, in the newsprint and things like that. Basically, it's It's just giving an idea of who she was by the actual things that are written about her in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Noni, we have any other raised hands?
We do. Next, I see Charles Walker has their hand raised. Please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hello, yes, my question is for each of the artists in general. It is a general question for night people. How is the lighting going to be on the statues? Does the city provide the lighting from an angle, above, below, or do you have some say as to what the lighting will be for folks who come to the city at night?
Can I start off on that?
Yes, why don't, go ahead.
I've seen some very effective lights that were slightly below ground level, looking up. Now, they did not illuminate in a way that a museum would, where you see all the exact modeling, but in terms of drama and highlighting, they're very effective. I would also like to, do some research with engineers and find out what is the possibility of having the lantern with perforations where light can pass through it, and maybe having that source of light being solar power. So I think it's an interesting question. I would also say that that area is fairly well lit, not specifically for a sculpture, but there's a lot of illumination around that general area.
Thank you, Richard. Vinnie or Tanda?
Yeah, I was going to say, we researched, there are light access sources. So for instance, if we decide to do in-ground lighting, that's a possibility. There's also poles that would also enable lighting. It's a conversation piece about what the city wants in terms of lighting for that area, what the pedestrian nighttime traffic is like. But accessibility for electricity is easy enough. It's just a matter of making a decision about what works best.
Would anyone else like to answer? Alvin, you're muted.
You're in here.
We can't hear you still. Would anyone
Can you
else?
hear me now?
want- Yeah, we can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, that's something we probably go into at a future date, obviously, with the lighting and the surrounding architectural items in there. I kind of designed mine to probably have lighting from the ground looking up, if possible. That's one of the reasons also why the pose, I kind of have her looking somewhat down, because I want it on the face as opposed to being an uplit view if the light is coming from the ground up. So for mine, I would actually probably like that recessed ground lighting with the light flashing up. And that's kind of was factored into my design as well.
Thanks, Alvin. Your video is off as well. You might want to put that back on if you can. All right. Basil and Tanda, do you
Well,
have something new?
No, nothing new. I question uplighting for environmental reasons, but so if the ambient light there is sufficient to create enough drama for the piece, I would preferably go with that. But if ground lighting up is the only option, then and it is needed, I think we'd have to go that way.
Thank you. Tanda? You're unmuted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, just wanted to add something about the panels. Like I questioned whether I was gonna get too much into it, but basically these are larger panels with a smaller surface that could be something that can be a platform to feature someone else's artwork besides mine. Meaning like anybody from these panelists here to the people from the community. I like the idea of having one portion being able to be taken out or left in, depending on community, basically activating the site continuously if the call is for that. The piece is as strong as it is on its own, but if there's a panel, a section of the panel that can be taken out, and like every time the piece is about every 5 years, the piece would need to be
Tanda, just want to interrupt you real quickly. So the question is about lighting. Do you have something to add for lighting?
Original, a lighting,
No, that's it.
the lighting would be from not directly onto the piece, but actually coming from above.
Thank you. All right. Noni, do we have any additional hands?
Yes, we have 10 more hands up, and next
Okay.
is Marie Cochran. Marie, I am, oh, sorry. Seems like Marie didn't have a question. So next is Rita. Rita Polly. You can now unmute.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Wonderful. My question is for Richard. What are those two verticals that sort of frame the Harriet Tubman figure?
We're not talking about the supports for the Liberty Bell. We're talking about the two other pieces,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. They were symbolic of the perils that she faced in making her way north, and almost sort of a volcanic lava stone kind of surface. I didn't want it to be anything that encouraged or that you really wanted to touch, but you know, a condensation of not only the perils, but the evils and her trials and tribulations. So again, they're abstractions of all, I guess, the sins that she had to work her way through and around in order to get to the North Gates.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Noni?
Yeah,
another
so
hand?
Marie actually raised her hand, or their hand again. So Marie, I am now letting you to talk. Please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hold on just 1 second. Let me see if I can, hold on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about this. We're all trying to deal with technology. So at this point, I know that I've heard Vinnie and Tanda talk about the educational portion of their design and what they hope to do and how they hope to engage people. Because Alvin Pettit's design is so unique. I know the other people might want to answer, but I'm specifically interested in how he may want to activate this work. I was impressed by the fact that it was site specific and people can get things, you know, being able to see it. But are there other ideas that Alvin Pettit might have in mind with educational materials?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Marie, for the question. Yeah, like I said, one of the things that I'd like this piece to educate people on is this particular aspect of Harriet Tubman's life, her as a soldier, her as a war hero, her as a freedom fighter. Like I said, I think that's underplayed a lot. You know, she wasn't just, yeah, she liberated slaves as far as rescuing them, but she also led military strikes and helped the army and the Union soldiers and the Union troops actually go in and fight. So I think that'll be part of the education, as well as sparking that aspect of the education. And also, now what I would propose doing is even educating, you know, student groups. I've had student groups come to my studio while I work. I do demonstrations. I've done plenty of communities work as far as even for young artists, showing the process of how these things are done, explaining to them for those that want actually career choices in the arts and in sculpture particularly, or any kind of public art. And I've done studio tours before, I've done speaking engagements, and I'm more than willing to, and I want to do that, even if I get this piece. And I'd love to do that process with students in Philadelphia. I mean, I'm only a next town away over in Jersey City. It's not too far where my studio is. And I have no, like little hour and some change traveling each way. I don't mind coming to Philly to tour groups. I mean, to talk to young people or people that are inspiring artists, and or having studio visitors come to my place just to demonstrate how the process and how it's done and how it's made. Did I answer your question pretty well, Marie?
Yes, it did. But like I said, I was really impressed with this particular part because something came up as we were talking about the fact that there's a contemporary aspect because, you know, you were looking at those other historic soldiers, but just the whole idea of fighting for one's country in contemporary times.
Yes, and like I said, also one of the contemporary aspects I added in there is what's going on in modern day news now. Like I'll reiterate, she is also, you can't see it here, but she is also standing on top of the Confederate flag, which is on the ground, which is a very contemporary subject that is taking place in our time and news today. So yes, it's almost, this piece is designed to be, like I said, almost like an archangel in ways, or almost like a guardian. They can go almost like a timeless piece. It could be a battle fought you know, from 150 years ago. It could be a battle that's being fought today in some ways. And I wanted that universal appeal, that in the stance and the posture and the feeling of the spirituality of the piece. And that's what I was trying to capture. So it was almost relevant for any time. And the age that I chose her at, I deliberately wanted to show her not too young and not too old. So I want a more, and this is still a prototype, so I'll go into the details of catching the features of the face, you know, very precisely. But I mainly wanted to just display her almost in a timeless essence of Harriet Tubman. So she could be middle-aged, she could be younger. We don't really need to know that, as long as it looks like her and you're capturing the expression and the movement and the emotion on her face, which is most important, because she's really in a deep contemplation state. And I really wanted to show that.
Thanks, Alvin. Thank you, Marie, for your question.
Thank you. Thank
you. Noni, do we have any other hands raised?
Yes, we have 9 more questions, and next is Cheryl Mobley Stimson. You are now, you can now unmute yourself.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Let me first of all thank you for this opportunity to participate in this discussion and to give direct input. This is my second time being directly involved in something like this, and I have to say, it's very enjoyable and very educational. Independence Hall is considered the birthplace of America, where the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence were signed. So I just want to take this opportunity to go a little deeper into your minds. This is for all the artists. How did this factor into your thought processes as you did your own contrast and comparison with this history? And what specific inferences should we make from your renderings about women, about slavery, about freedom, determination, or anything else that I may not have mentioned?
Thanks, Cheryl. We'll go in order of the presentation. So Vinnie, would you like to answer?
That was a multiple question. First of all, I think the interesting thing about the Philadelphia story is it's the beginning of her story. And so I think that she's inspiring because a lot of times people are preoccupied with the end story and they don't understand that that beginning is the nexus of everything that happens. So because this is Philadelphia, I felt it was important to do her at the appropriate age. She was 29, you know, when she arrived in Philadelphia, and she was alone. And, you know, she made a decision to literally walk 100 some odd miles to freedom. I imagine that once she realized that she had actually arrived, there's that initial relief, as in, thank God, like I'm here. And then ultimately, you know, with that achievement, what I find most inspiring about her is that she felt a responsibility to help others. And I think that she is a wonderful example of service. It's like, don't just serve yourself, serve your community, you know, help your family, help, you know, your friends, whatever the case may be. In this instance, because of the way that I sculpt, I took the opportunity to stay site specific. This is Philadelphia. I wanted very badly to do Harriet Tubman, the soldier, but that's South Carolina. And so, I took the opportunity to just totally dwell on Philadelphia's story. So again, I looked at the people that she exchanged with, the people that helped her, the people that she befriended. This sculpture won't go anyplace else besides Philadelphia because it's the Philadelphia story. The other thing also too is that 95% of the world believes in God. And I thought it was important to show her spirituality. She was known to have visions, she was known to be prayerful. She was known to be extremely strategic. I think that this Harriet Tubman exemplifies all of that. Tried to keep her simple, tried to keep her clean. And again, to make a statement in that space because she is surrounded by the white patriarch. Again, I remember, being on the site and, our instructions were she needs to compete. And to compete doesn't necessarily mean to overtake. It just simply means that she needs to make a strong statement. For me, this is as I said, it is a candid portrait. This is the person. This is not, some figurehead, some grip and grin portrait of somebody. This is a woman being for real at a moment that was a major milestone in her life and subsequently in other people's lives.
Thank you, Vinnie. Richard?
My mic is on. You can hear me, can't you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, very good. I thought I made it pretty apparent in the way that I oriented Harriet Tubman, and also that the symbols that were included in the monument, that this is very definitely a Philadelphia monument. The Liberty Bell, I think wherever you go in this country, people will recognize it as a symbol of liberty, but also the symbol that is in Philadelphia. As with the Keystone in the back, and the Keystone was the symbol that was designated for Pennsylvania because of its key role in holding together all the states with the rebellion against England, and also its crucial role in fighting slavery as well. I did have incorporated within the monument actually a Union cap, which it got so disguised that it's not apparent any longer. But and that was because of one of the first Black regiments was established here in Pennsylvania, actually up in Lamont, not far from where I went to school in Elkins Park, and that community still celebrates that and its strong relationship with the Quakers, who were staunch abolitionists. So I think all these things are sort of like educational components, and I do admire all the presentations and the different voices, but I chose the moment when she steps into freedom. Mason-Dixie line was so close, but close can be worlds apart, because it was the house of slavery, and Philadelphia, with all of its problems, and we still have problems, it was a breath of fresh air to those who were trying to escape. And I feel like I have a pretty close insight to Philadelphians, as I was educated, born, bred, and raised in Philadelphia. And I had some questions about erecting the Liberty Bell above her head, But I thought if we're talking about symbolic things that would anchor her to a very definite location, then certainly that should be one of them. I think I wandered there and probably answered a lot of different aspects, but
Thank you, Richard.
excuse me if that's the case.
Thank you. Tanda? You're muted, Tanda, and your video's off. Yep.
Okay, hi. So yeah, I'm glad to get that question because I want to just say my piece is the actual, we're talking about how it connects to Philadelphia. For me, it's everything from the contract, the ink of the contract. I've been using this in my work throughout my work, this sort of like kind of mark made as some kind of a contract, and contract actually inspired by like the Declaration of Independence, the things we say about what the country is. And the piece itself for me is, I want it to be something that is really memorable and graphic. So I decided to use Harriet Tubman's head, and you can see in her somewhat below her neck and her clothing is graphically her clothing on the pages of the book is graphically done, and is meant to be the Keystone State, like inspired by the Keystone of Pennsylvania. So that is a Keystone graphic, and the very graphic image of the profile of Harriet Tubman that then leads you into a more detailed image where you can actually see the surfaces, the lush surface of the bronze and the hand strokes of the bronze that's going to be of her clothing. So you go from that kind of very traditional like approach of how the clay becomes bronze and how that looks. Then you have the very graphic keystone that surrounds her head. So for me, that is just like a kind of a reminder that of her place here, and how this piece in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is just the most important kind of like beginning of the story to be told.
Thank you, Tanda. Alvin?
Yes. Can you briefly just reiterate the question for me again? I want to make sure I'm answering it accurately. Hello?
I mean, just to cut to the chase, and thank you so much for all the answers, and thank you in advance for the answers that will be given. But just to summarize it, basically, I'm just trying to get inside your head and wonder what your thought process was as you contrasted and compared Philadelphia's history, right, as this birthplace of America and democracy, and what it is that we're supposed to infer from your renderings along the lines of independence, of and freedom, of determination, or anything else that you were thinking as you were kind of putting this composition together. Anything else that I may not have even mentioned. So I'm just kind of curious to know.
Okay, yes, okay, yeah. Well, let me start by saying, even though my concept was inspired by a battle that took place in South Carolina, like I said, it was an inspiration, but remember all those 700 slaves that was freed in South Carolina that she freed, some of them came through the North, which came through Philly, so it's all a Philly story, the way I see it. With that being said, I visited the site multiple times, and I sometimes just stood there and wondered how I could create something that went in place with the architectural environment that was already there, the theme that was already there. And that's, once again, going back where you saw my rendering before during my 10 minutes, was, that soldier lineup, that those guardians of this palace. Like I said, this building is awful elaborate. It takes on a palace stigma when you look at it. And these statues, especially the two generals that will be lined up where this Harriet Tubman is going, I felt it was just appropriate to have her there as a military leader, where the rest of the war heroes are lined up with there. And also to have a Black woman amongst them, and as a soldier, as a war hero. I think is just not just a powerful scene, but a very necessary one, a very important one. And the way I designed the post too, I want the viewers to look at this and almost, like I said, facial expressions are very important to me. I have her with her eyes kind of somewhat closed. They're not completely closed if you look at the close-up version, because she's still on the battlefield. So she's still aware of the dangers of around her, but yet she's in a very almost meditative state of posing where she could be praying. So I want the viewer to ask, what's on her mind while they look at her face? Is she preparing to go to another battle or another conquest? Or is she kind of praying that she made it out safe of a battle she just had? What is going through? And I really want that pose, the wind blowing against her, the expression on the face, kind of the strong stance. I want that to really entice the conversation of the viewer to really look at it and just keep asking themselves questions about what she was thinking at that very moment.
Thank you, Alvin. Basil?
Yes, what I want to put into the composition are Philadelphians. I want people to see themselves as part of this drama and what would be the experience as they go through the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman. The other sculptures on the apron to the City Hall are stately, generally quiet, passive poses of people who have reached freedom, who have achieved, and are standing in a stately manner. I wanted this to stand out in terms of this is the moment that she is known for. This is where her spirit was at its greatest. This is where she had an expanded spirit, determination, intelligence, awareness, and camaraderie, where she is not coming alone. It's not just her freedom, but she is bringing with her Philadelphians, or I would say Americans, people all over the world can identify in some way with the emotion, with the drama of going through this experience. I wanted to have a unit, as much as it has a Philadelphia root, I want it to be Philadelphia to the world. I want Ukrainians to come here and see this and experience and feel the experience that they had. People from all over the world who have gone through this sort of experience of apartheid, slavery, being exported, war, whatever it is, that type of struggle. This is the intense emotion that I wanted to bring out in people, in each individual as they view the sculpture, as they put themselves within the sculpture. So my view, as much as it speaks about Harriet Tubman's experience and her drive to the North, it talks about any person who visits Philadelphia can leave Philadelphia and say, I am inspired to keep going, because we all need to keep going in small ways as well as large ways. It's the hero in us is in small things, getting up every morning, keep going. When you can't go any further, when there's pain, when you have reached a limit, you keep going, because it's liberty or death. And this is what I want to bring to the fore. Not the stately moment when war is won or freedom is achieved. I want you to feel the fear of maybe not making it. And what are the alternatives? You have to make it. It's liberty or death. You have to keep going. It's liberty or death. So this is what I want to bring to Philadelphians and to the world. I want it to be a monument that not just speaks about Philadelphia, but goes across the world and become universal.
Thank you, Basil, and thank you, everyone. So we have 9 more questions that we want to get to. Noni, can you call our next person?
Sure. Next, we have Judith Robinson. You can now unmute yourself.
Good evening. Thank you all very much. I'm Judith Robinson with the Friends of the Tanner House here in Philadelphia. Thank you all very much. Beautiful, thought-provoking for sure. But I was concerned about the materials. Tanda, yours specifically, and then the others, just to give me clarity on each material that will be used for each artist. Thank you.
Thank you. So Vinnie, do you want to just give clarity on the materials?
For the sculpture, it's bronze with a black patina, and it will be standing on a Masabi black granite pedestal, which will rest on a Masabi black granite apron.
Thank you. Richard, your materials?
Yes, I think I mentioned it earlier, but all these things can stand to be repeated. This will be a silicon bronze. It's chemically slightly different than some of the older bronze monuments, but bronze nonetheless, extraordinarily durable. And the monument will be mounted on a black granite base, again, materials which are almost impervious to normal weather conditions. And the example of which is all around City Hall, because, basically they're all stone and bronze. And this figure relates a little bit more, I kind of got more inspiration from the inside of City Hall. It's the figures that sort of adorn the top of the columns as you walk through, the indigenous Americans, Asian Americans, Black Americans, and so on, and animal figures and plant figures as well. So yeah, I did. Obviously, you have to be impressed with all the monumental mounted figures around City Hall, but I wanted this to be much different in terms of its perspective. I mean, she does have her carbine strapped to her back and her pistol in her waistband and so on, but I wanted the Liberty Bell and also the lantern that she's holding out as a beacon of hope for future generations to be what was focused on as she again steps into freedom.
Thank you, Richard. Tanda, and if we can, just so that we want to make sure we get to everyone, if you can try to stick to the question that's being asked. So Tanda, the question is about your materials.
Yeah, so my material is black and bronze, and there's specific areas of polished bronze and granite at the base.
Thank you. Alvin?
Yes, mine is bronze as well. And my patina is going, you can see a little bit in my architectural rendering. It's more of a grayish black to match the other two generals that are there. And it's going to be patinaed as you get further down into more like a rustic color, which I wanted to go into the base, which is going to be like a rustic sort of granite color base. Now, I'm still working at that design, and part of me even almost likes just the shackles and stuff is the base alone too, but I do need probably the granite base just for the wording and everything and stuff too. But it goes from black to rustic color.
Thank you. And Basil?
Mine will be bronze, silicon bronze. The patina will be a dark patina, relatively dark. And it will stand on, the wedge will be a sloping granite pedestal, and on that, under that will be an apron of a square granite, black granite again. The apron, the wedge curves in front and is straight at the back, and then the apron at the bottom will be square, so it will bring it into a uniformity.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Noni, can we have our next question?
Sure. Next, we have Naisha Tamara. Please correct me if I didn't say that correctly. You can now unmute yourself.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, some really fantastic pieces there. So really in deep appreciation of everyone's work. I wanted to, a couple of the things I was going to ask, Alvin Pettit already answered, which were, you know, just some of the symbolic meanings behind his piece. You know, I do like, when I was looking at it, interpreting it, I like feeling like, you know, she is in prayer. I love the spirituality of that. I love the sort of stepping up. It kind of just gives that hope factor. And the only thing that I missed, and I wanted to, I was gonna ask about that, but I think that kind of got answered, that I was on the right page with my interpretation there. I like the warrior positioning and the strength that it exudes. But I did want to ask, and I may have missed this because there was a slight area of time that I ran to the restroom during this call. Do the artists, did you all already announce the measurements, like the height of these pieces?
They did, but I think some of them did. Do you want to, if that's your question, we can have everyone.
I'm just curious, you know, because I know we have to kind of move it along here. I'm just really curious, like, just, you know, one line, what is the height of each piece?
Sure. Vinnie?
It's a 9-foot figure on a 6-inch high pedestal.
Nice.
Richard?
The bronze monument will be 10 foot or perhaps a little bit larger. Harriet Tubman's face will be approximately at 7 feet above the ground level, and this will be mounted on a foot-high podium of granite, black granite.
Nice.
Tanda?
Hi, the highest point of the piece is 12 feet.
And Alvin?
Mine is roughly 11 to 12 feet. And then, yeah, with considering the base and the actual top of the head, reaching about 12 feet probably.
Basil?
The figures will be 1.33 life size, which would put them at roughly about 8 feet. The hand would extend above another foot or so, so that's 9 feet. The granite wedge would be at the highest point where Harriet Tubman is standing, is approximately 4 feet, and that stands on a 1-foot pedestal. So that's 1 and 4, 5, 5 and 9 is approximately 14 feet to the top hand.
Okay, thank you, Basil.
Awesome. And Tanda said 4 feet, right?
Pardon?
No, Tanda?
No, I said 12.
Tanda said 12 feet. Okay. Noni, you have our next question.
Yes. Next, we have Sister Mullally. Again, I'll unmute yourself.
Oh, right
yeah.
here.
Go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity and really enjoying seeing all of the artwork. I just had a question for Alvin, that you've been putting so much emphasis on the 2 statues that you said would be flanking Nana Harriet Tubman. I'm questioning, maybe you didn't research, but they were both people who supported enslavement. They were 2 white men who supported enslavement. And so putting them so featured in your presentation, it makes it kind of problematic. And maybe you didn't know that. You could Google their names and they would come up and tell you they both were very involved with supporting enslavement.
Well, from the research I gave, they were still Union soldiers, and my purpose was to put something there that relates to the environment that was there. I'm sure, yeah, there's a lot of checkered history around there with the monuments that are already there. You know, that's not debatable. But you know that they're still there right now, as far as, and they're still military soldiers. So I was just feeding off the visual aspect of what's there and relating it to my Harriet Tubman pose and statue to kind of as a continuing of that regardless of their checkered history.
Okay, but I'd say the problematics of it, you know, because a lot of these statues from that era that represents those type of patriarchal enslavers are being removed. So you're talking about placing or something, maybe one day with enough pressure, we can get their statues removed from City Hall. But other than that, I enjoy your statue immensely. Your work is beautiful. I just found it problematic putting so much focus on her being around these two white male and people who supported enslavement.
But you know what? And I'm glad you picked up on that. And that's exactly why I want her there as a Black woman, you know, because they were, like I said, there are still Union soldiers, not Confederate soldiers, but they're still Union soldiers. But, you know, I'm not going to debate, you know, obviously your history, what you're saying here, but that's even more important why you see a Black woman soldier there amongst them, as even shown, whereas they're on these horses, she's on a pile of chains and shackles to show she was a warrior of a different aspect and of a different kind, but still, you know, just as powerful, if not more so than what's there.
Okay, so being with two males who, if they had their way, they would have kept her enslaved, you know, that's a whole nother story. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right. All right, so Noni, can we have our next question?
Yes, up next we have Javida Hill. You can now unmute yourself to ask your question.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for addressing materials, only because we have all of this statuary all over the city that's lasted a lifetime and a couple of lifetimes. And so the materials is very important in terms of being long lasting. Because one of the things that many of us here in Philadelphia know is that in less than a year after the Octavius Cato statue was there, and it's a beautiful statue, we all love it, but the dating fell off. And I'm not even sure that it's been replaced yet. So materials important. And I think one of the questions that I also have is that at one point, and I think it was you, Tanda, that talked about rice being part of your sculpture and the constellation being part of your sculpture. And I don't see that.
I don't know if I've said that there's not going to be actual rice involved in. Is that what you're saying? That
yes, I mean, you talk about rice a lot, and I was wondering, where is this rice coming from in part of the rendering of the sculpture? And then the constellation, where is that coming from in terms of the rendering of your sculpture?
I don't see, it's not very visible in this presentation, but maybe online there you'll see more imagery. But the rice is just something for me, it's just symbolic of this sort of form, and it really comes what you see it's turned. This is me as an artist speaking, is what inspires me to do particular shapes and how it actually connects to our history here in the United States. So for me, that's like an additional thing. But what it turns out is that you're going to see this very simple, like sort of portal sort of shape, that the reasoning behind that is that's sort of this kind of grain, potentiality, and like that's as an artist, that's the form is something that is important to me. But as a visitor, you're going to be visiting this encountering the statue and visiting a surface that's going to be reflecting you in this vision of Harriet Tubman in this kind of golden glow. So as far as it goes, sometimes I struggle as to whether or not I should mention like the deeper meanings that mean something to me in my ongoing work, and that I actually do, what I put out there, and and what you see as a statue is basically simple forms. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see simple, bold forms that's going to look good today and look good 1,000 years from now.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Noni, let's call our next question.
Yeah, so we have 5 more, and we'll try to get as many as possible before 7:30. Lawrence Copeland, you're up next, and you can unmute yourself. Lawrence, can you unmute yourself?
How about now?
We can hear you.
Okay. I've had a little bit of trouble thinking about how to articulate my question. It goes primarily to Richard and Alvin, though the other artists can speak to this. There are lots of soldiers, lots of statues and sculptures of Civil War heroes, and almost all of them are pictured with guns or swords. They do, as one of the artists said, they're of an era. And in some ways, we can look at them now and maybe not feel the martial force coming through the presentation. And so maybe this is impossible in light of the renderings you provided here. But I wonder if Harriet Tubman can be Harriet Tubman without a gun. Is it possible to convey her vision, her courage, and her daring, which is really what her legacy survives on, without those? And is it possible to get away from another representation of an important person with a gun? However important a gun or guns were to her in the 1850s and during the war, in 2023, guns have a different meaning in our culture, and we're coming to a very tragic reckoning with guns. And I just want, some of the artists were able to imagine her without that, and I wonder if your works, if you think that's a possibility, or it's simply impossible to convey what you want to without a gun.
Thank you for that question. So that's either Alvin or Richard, if you want to go first, but can you convey her vision and courage without the gun?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Richard, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say certainly it could be conveyed. I think the other part is that it was very definitely a reality of the times, and a reality of her times, and thank God that she had access to them. I think the more important issue, rather than a weapon, because a weapon is not really pointed at anyone or in a threatening thing, it's self-defense. But I do understand your concern, because we have an abundance of weapons and an abundance of violence that occurs today. But we also have history that tends to be rewritten. And in trying to stay somewhat close historically to Harriet Tubman's role in American history, I think, yes, I think the gun is appropriate. I think there are other symbols that she represents, and that's why the lantern, I think, is in my particular piece is much more in the forefront than any weapon, and also the bell, for the main part, frames her monument as she steps towards freedom. But I do see your point. I am very sympathetic with it as well, but I think there's an ugly reality that was there that, I think, at least for this particular point that I took in my monument, I would be remiss if I did not have it there. But thank you for the question, Alan.
Yeah. So Lawrence, yes, thanks for the question. And let me start by saying that to answer your question, yeah, I can make anything work. Can I make it work without the gun? Sure, I can find a way to do that. Would I rather have the guns? Yes, I'd rather have the guns. And I'll tell you why. Not only for historical accuracy, which is very important here. Yeah, you can show Harriet Tubman or an individual without guns. It's pretty hard to display a soldier on the battlefield, though, without a gun, which is more of my concept in that sense. And also, the guns where I place them, everything is thought out through every detail when I do these a piece like this. The gun is actually helping with the design. So the way the gun is laying, the way it's slanted on the back of the shoulder, when you see it from a profile, it actually goes with the angle of the body. So it actually becomes a very much an important design element and a design factor in my sculpture, as well as just a historically accurate piece. With that being said, also another part of my concept, why the guns are very important for me, is that it's the stark contrast to her praying. So when I have her in a praying position with her eyes closed, the concept, and I go into this in my more extensive proposal that I gave to the committee, these very questions. I'm very aware on a city building, showing guns in the day's politics, I'm very much aware of that. But the reason why I did that is because it's a contrast to her praying. So it shows that she's a woman of peace who could go there if needed to, take it to another level. And that's where the guns are not being held, they're not being branded in any way. She's praying, but they are strapped to her body if she needs to go to another level. And it shows the duality of what she had to go through, being of peace and as well a woman of war when needed.
Thank you, Alvin. Noni, we have more questions.
Next, we have Kate Gunther. Kate, you can now unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kate Gunther. My question's for Vinnie Bagwell. I just would like you to talk more about the pose that you have Harriet Tubman in. Yeah, I just thought that your piece is really beautiful, and I'm just kind of in awe of it and the pose that it's in. If you could just elaborate on that.
You know, it's interesting. When I do these kinds of work, I like to call my historian friends. And, you know, the big conversation we had about this particular sculpture, because it was important that it be site specific. One of the first questions, because I listened to the instructions, we were told that it would be okay to do it without the guns. So of course, the question is, if you're going to be running through the woods for a couple of days, going 100 miles somewhere, you might want some kind of weapon. So I chose something that I thought was accessible. I don't think she had a gun when she got to Philadelphia the first time. She might have gotten it later on in history after she started working with other abolitionists and whatnot. But, you know, when I talked to the historians, they all agreed that they did not think that she arrived the first time with the gun. So I'm thinking she came with a kitchen butcher knife. She's got a knife in the side of her skirt belt. But again, you know, I called myself putting myself in her position. It's like, okay, I'm gonna run. I'm leaving tonight. I'm out of here. I'm gone. And then she gets through it. And mind you, she basically came up 301. I know 301 because I come that way when I come from Maryland. I'm like, this is the route that Harriet Tubman took. That's so deep. So I'm thinking to myself, if you actually make it, like you actually escape slavery and you realize the next morning that you're actually in the city of Philadelphia, it's like for me, and again, knowing that she was a spiritual person, I'm thinking she's going to pause and say thank you to her God. And so this is that moment. And the question is, what does that look like? You know, some people pray with their hands together on their knees. Some people just bow their heads. Some people raise their arms up above there. I mean, there are a variety of different body stances, language, whatever you want to call it, that people use to pray. I wanted to use something that I thought might be seen as universal. Again, palms up, you know, head slightly inclined toward the sky. This is a big sculpture. She's 9 feet tall. You don't realize how big 9 feet is until you stand right up on it. If you're standing away from it, it may not seem as large. But again, you know, want to keep her engageable for people who were close up as well as far away. So I didn't want to incline her head up too high. Also wanted to be able to make her face be visible enough to recognize that it is her. And so basically, in talking to my church people, you know, they gave me the metaphor of, you know, her hands, her palms are up because she's going to receive the blessings that rain down upon her. You know, if you're not really a church person, you know, the question is, so what do you believe? You know, I think most people, when good things happen, they do say, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jehoshaphat, whoever you pray to. There's a moment where you realize that you got there by grace. And so this is her expressing gratitude for mercy and grace. I also think that in that process, because she achieved freedom in the way that she achieved it, the way that she experienced it, I think that this is also the moment when it occurred to her, I can go back, I can do this again. I'm going back. And so I think of this as a moment of inspiration for her, that she is communing with, well, I'll just say the spirit. And she is coming to a reckoning that she's gonna go back and help her family. And, you know, with that, she's gathering strength. And so, you know, I think that this visage is very different than the other sculptures that are around her. In this instance, you see somebody showing their humanity. This is not Harriet Tubman, the war general. She hasn't become that yet. This is the moment where she has reached a decision that I'm going to do something. And this is before all of the other things that came afterwards. So no, she doesn't have a gun. She's just a girl. She's 29 years old, and she is someone who's very brave and feels a certain responsibility, and she's gathering herself. And that's what I was trying to convey with this piece, that it's a moment of gratitude and inspiration.
Thank you, Vinnie. Okay, so we have time for one more question. Noni, can you call on that person?
Next, we have Nathaniel Evans. You can now unmute yourself. Nathaniel, can you unmute yourself? Are you there? Okay, I'm not sure that Nathaniel is there. So next we have Jacqueline Wiggins. Jacqueline, can you unmute yourself? Okay. All right, let's go down there.
Next one.
Okay.
Carol,
Tanda.
Oh,
sorry.
Are you there? Is this Jacqueline? Okay.
Yeah, this is Jacqueline. My question was to Tanda, and I just didn't hear clearly the height of what you're preparing. It didn't come through clearly to me. Can you give it again? How tall were you?
12 feet high.
12 feet high. Okay, thank you.
Let's see if we can just grab one more question.
Okay, Geraldine Brown, if you're there, you can now unmute yourself. Okay, no? No? So let's try one more. Bobby Pettit. You can now unmute yourself. Okay. They may have logged off.
All right, well, we can move on if that's all the questions. So why don't we go to our next step slide here? I'm going to make sure that people get some direction on what the next things are. Okay, well, thank you everyone again for all of your very, very insightful questions and sharing your feedback. We just have this couple more things we want to remind you of. So again, right after this meeting, our public input survey will open. We want you to make sure your voice is counted and that you're participating in this process. So beyond this meeting, right? So this is such a historic project, and we want all Philadelphians to be a part of it. So the public input survey will be available on OACCE's website at creativephl.org from 8 p.m. tonight until Friday, September the 1st. We will be making the recording of this presentation available on OACCE's website. However, you don't have to watch this video to fill out the online survey. All of the information that you need is directly in the survey, including the artist renderings and models that you saw tonight, along with their written narrative and a 2-minute audio description from each of the artists explaining their statue design, their concepts in their own words. The survey should take you 15 minutes, and just to let you know, you won't be able to hit submit unless you answer all of the questions for each artist. So after we receive your feedback, then in September, the rankings and comments that are received for the survey will be tallied and shared with the semi-finalists. And so they'll have an opportunity to incorporate the your feedback into their design. The rankings and comments, again, will also be tallied and shared with the advisory committee, because again, your feedback will be one of several evaluation criteria that the advisory committee will consider when selecting the winning artist and statue design. Then in October, the semifinalists will make final presentations to the advisory committee, who will select the winning artist and design. Also in October, we will be making a public announcement of the winning artist and design. So that's it. The full project schedule is on OACCE's website with more details. We just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and for just sharing your thoughts and participating. Again, please stay connected with us by joining OACCE's mailing list at creativephl.org and following us on social media. Thank you again, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. and
Right.
good night.